Good evening, y'all. My name is Kenzie Walker, and I am proud to serve as the Executive Director of the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum in Matewan. If you're joining us live, now is the time to say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching and celebrating from. Tonight, I am proud to kick off the museum's 4th Annual Red Bandana Awards ceremony, a proud tradition of ours since 2018. It's a tradition where we recognize and honor Appalachian people who embody, both in their actions and in their words, what is best about our region's people. Some of you listening may already know this story of coal miners and their families rising up for justice in the coal fields of West Virginia. Perhaps you learned about it through your family. You may have learned about this history at the museum itself, or maybe even during one of our many programs during the statewide Battle of Blair Mountain Centennial that took place earlier this year. Few say they learned about it in school. For those of you who aren't as familiar, 100 years ago, 10,000 miners marched for 50 miles from Marmet to Blair Mountain, and they were united across racial, gender, and ethnic lines. They marched for constitutional rights and economic justice, aiming to get to Mingo County, West Virginia, to finally unionize all of southern West Virginia. Together, with red bandanas tied around their necks as an identifier, these miners formed the Redneck Army. In recent years, the symbol of the red bandana has reemerged as a marker of class solidarity, and it's found its way into the museum's many programs and exhibits today, including our donor wall, our teachers' resources and lesson plans, student field trips, and in this ceremony tonight. Tonight's awards will honor Hellraisers, truth tellers, and art makers, and Mine Wars Museum leaders and partners will present all of these awards. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Lou Martin, a founding board member of the museum, to present our first award of the night, the Mother Jones Hellraiser Award.
Thanks, Kenzie. The Mother Jones Hellraiser Award is for individuals who have provided exceptional leadership, courageous action, career-long dedication, or other noteworthy contributions to economic justice activism, particularly labor rights in West Virginia. Mother Jones was an inspiring orator and organizer for the United Mine Workers who participated in several key episodes of the West Virginia Mine Wars. This year, the Mine Wars Museum's board has voted to give the Mother Jones Hellraiser Red Bandana Award to Terry Steele. Like so many people, I first met Terry as the husband of Wilma Steele. They are both Matewan natives, and Wilma has been a leader in the efforts to preserve the history of the Battle of Blair Mountain for many years now. She's been doing this work since before the 2011 March on Blair Mountain, through permit hearings and being one of the founders of the Mine Wars Museum, and then becoming its unofficial spokesperson, doing interviews and on and on. She has been essential in this effort, and we're grateful for all of her work. And during a lot of that time, Terry was typically in the background. And if you weren't paying attention, you could have overlooked the fact that he was at every volunteer day and then some. When we needed 2x4s to build walls, Terry was there. When we needed to build the walls, Terry was there. When we needed somebody to tell Local 1440 what was going on with the museum, Terry was there. When we needed painting, lights installed, something hauled somewhere, cornbread made, and on, Terry has always been there. And Just as Wilma has been essential to the Mine Wars Museum, so has Terry. Both have truly given their all to make this museum a success. Another thing they've done together is to work to protect the environment. In 2013, they were jointly awarded the Laura Foreman Passion for Justice Award. They are stewards of the land, protectors of the mountains, speaking out about the damages that mountaintop removal has done. And that leads me to another point. Neither of them shy away from speaking the truth, no matter how unpopular it might be. And that's something that Mother Jones was well known for. Partly through his environmental work, Terry's become involved in ongoing efforts to study and publish records about land ownership in West Virginia and in Mingo County in particular, attending and speaking at meetings around the region and helping host a public meeting in Matewan, among other things. And Terry's been a dedicated union activist for 5 decades. It was 50 years ago that Terry joined the United Mine Workers of America. He's been one of its most loyal and steadfast members. Mother Jones would be proud. Terry always attends the local 1440 meetings in Matewan and serves on its burial committee, presenting Bibles to grieving families. He is also now representing Local 1440 in a new museum effort to memorialize the March on Blair Mountain. And when the union calls on its members to go to St. Louis or to DC or to Brookwood or to New York, Terry answers the call. And he also preaches the gospel of unionism every chance he gets. The only reason that unions have ever grown, whether it was in 1921 or 2021, is because people like Terry have explained how unions work and why they're important. Mother Jones also preached unionism wherever she went and fought many battles, but she never had to fight the battle of Facebook. And well, Terry fights that battle almost every night, and I admire him for it. If nobody challenges lies told in public, well, we've seen the kind of damage that that can do. In 2016, Terry also became a member of Local 1440's delegation to the state compact, the Coal Miners Political Action Committee, and then he became chair of that delegation. And as part of that team, he's continuing the fight for a just black lung compensation system, meeting with union officials and legislators to try to fix the broken system that we have now. Finally, Terry's a living example of strong Appalachian values. He looks out for his neighbors, he helps people in need, pitches in to make his community better. Not to mention, he will make a Long Island iced tea for anyone who really needs one. And some people say that he's pretty good at rook, although there's some disagreement about that. Nevertheless, it's my honor to represent the museum in recognizing Terry Steele with this year's Mother Jones Hellraiser Red Bandana Award. Congratulations, Terry.
Well, it really sounded good, Lou. I don't know where all of it's true or not, but it sure sounded good. You could have introduced me as Wilma Steele's husband. That's how, basically, how I'm known. It's not Terry Steele, but Wilma Steele's husband, and that's all right too. So, but I'd like to think I'm more of a. I don't know if you call me a hellraiser or not. I'm more of a connector, or I think that's what I've been for the last 30, 35 years. Is I bring people together who normally, I think a lot of them would never meet each other if it wasn't for me and Wilma. And I was looking at the three other people that have won this award, and I knew all of them personally. You know, I don't know if they knew each other personally, but I knew all three of them personally through the work that we've done or working with those people. You know, so it's like, you know, somebody, I think you was telling Rick Wilson about the front porch. You know, he missed the front porch, and that's what I done for Until I was about 40 years old, I sat on the front porch with my neighbors and raised hell, which was all right. But that gets you nowhere if you're just raising hell with your neighbors. And I'm talking about solving all the problems and doing it all on the front porch. Until I got off the front porch and started doing other things is when my life started being enriched, I think. So like I say, I appreciate you saying all those good things, and hell, half of them was true, but I'll take it. So thank you. And with those 3 other people that have won this, I know I'm in good company. So thank y'all.
Thanks to both of y'all. Next up, I get to introduce Chuck Keeney, who will be presenting the Carter G. Woodson Truth Teller Award. This award is for those whose work uncovers, documents, analyzes, preserves, and/or disseminates significant aspects of the history of labor activism in the state, particularly the Southern West Virginia Mine Wars.
Thanks, Kenzie, and welcome everybody that's here at our 4th Annual Red Bandana Awards. The Carter G. Woodson Award, Truth Teller Award, is something that's really special to me because it deals with academia. It deals with what we're all about here at the Mine Wars Museum. And there isn't a single scholar that has ever written a word about the West Virginia Mine Wars who hasn't been influenced by the work of Fred Barkey. Fred Barkey was a student at the University of Pittsburgh, where he got his PhD. He got his earlier work he did at Marshall University, and then he went to Pitt. And as a West Virginia University graduate, I will not hold that against you, but he studied under one of the giants of American labor historians, David Montgomery. And it's in the late 60s and early 70s that Fred Barkey wrote a dissertation that's probably been talked about more than any other dissertation I know of regarding West Virginia labor history, and that's a history of the Socialist Party in West Virginia. And Dr. Barkey wrote about this movement in West Virginia, not just an institutional history of labor in West Virginia, but looking at the political beliefs and the impact of socialism on the West Virginia Mine Wars and also workers in the northern part of the state. And it's really important when you think about truth telling, because this was a history that was written at the height of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall had come up just less than a decade before that. It wasn't popular to talk about socialism in a positive light in the United States. And the dissertation itself was a bold move. And for many, many years, I would hear about Fred Barkey's dissertation from other scholars. His work has influenced people from Ronald Lewis, Ken Fones-Wolf, David Allen Corbin, Lou Martin, and myself, and many, many others, Stan Bumgarner, and just about anybody that's ever done any research on the mine wars. But after his dissertation and after his work at the University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Barkey went on to be one of the founders of the West Virginia Labor History Association in 1976. And the Labor History Association, it's celebrating its 45th year as an organization. It's been around for a long time. It has done tremendous work, with the Mountain Messenger, the publication that Dr. Barkey has edited in the past, and with the West Virginia Labor Hall of Honor, and in recognizing labor people who contributed to the labor movement in West Virginia history. He's done tremendous work as a teacher, teaching at the University of Charleston, Marshall University, the Institute for Labor Studies at WVU. He was professor emeritus at the West Virginia Graduate College. He has served as the chair of the Coal Heritage Trail Authority. And to top it all off, he was knighted by the King of Belgium, the Order of Leopold II, for his work on Belgian glass workers. Dr. Barkey's work, and I want to take a moment or two to talk a little bit about his work. He's done work not just on the Socialist Party, and he showed the nuances within the Socialist Party in West Virginia. It was different to be a socialist from the northern part of the state than the southern part of the state. How socialism influenced rank and file leaders like Frank Keeney and Fred Mooney and Harold Houston, a very significant person in the mine wars and in the socialist movement in West Virginia. He also did tremendous work on immigrants, and his work in Transnational West Virginia, one of, I think, the best book on immigrant labor in West Virginia. His chapter on Italian miners in Boomer during the Paint Creek, Cabin Creek strike and their contributions to the strike victory and the struggle that was going on there. His work on Belgian glass workers. This insertion of looking at the history of Italians, looking at the history of Belgians, looking at the history of immigrants is something that's very important, not just to labor history, but also to Appalachian history, as it's often thought of that Appalachia was a, homogenous region that was just Scots-Irish settlers. And you were one of the groundbreaking scholars in that. There's a lot more I could talk about with Dr. Barkey. I would like to briefly mention his work as a mentor. I've mentioned, Dr. Barkey, that you have been a mentor to many individuals. When I was a graduate student getting my master's at Marshall University, I studied under Bob Maddox, and I'm sure you remember Bob from many years ago. And when I told Bob I was going to write a thesis on Frank Keeney, the first thing he told me was, "You have to meet Fred Barkey." And he gave me your phone number and told me to call you. So I gave you a call, and you invited me into your home. You shared documents with me. I remember being in your basement going over old newspapers of the Labor Argus and reading op-eds that Fred Mooney had written in between the Paint Creek, Cabin Creek strike and the latter phase of the mine wars during that internal turmoil that District 17 was going under whenever Keeney and Mooney were kind of doing a little bit of an insurgency within District 17. It's a very important aspect of the mine wars that you focused on in your book. And just for helping out the next generation and inspiring so many other people. I don't think the Mine Wars Museum would exist without your work. I certainly wouldn't be the scholar that I am without your work, without your mentorship. And we simply wouldn't have our understanding of our labor history in West Virginia, of the struggles of working class people in West Virginia without your legacy. And it's my great honor to congratulate you on winning the Truth Teller Award. So thank you, Dr. Barkey.
You're very welcome. And it's wonderful to be here this evening and to participate with such experienced and erudite folks as you all. I, of course, married into the culture of West Virginia. My father-in-law was a socialist, and his father, Abraham Lincoln Holstein, was a very important person in the East Bank area. And I've enjoyed very much. I'm a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and pretty much middle class actually in origin. And one of the most wonderful things that I have done with my life was to meet and join with others who felt that these were important subjects that ought to be expanded and disseminated wherever possible. And I'm so proud to meet people who are doing that. And I want to say that one of the things that interested me was that so many of these individuals have made a real sacrifice and a real contribution to our progress as a progressive and hopefully democratic country. And I appreciate this very much. And I hope that the Lord gives me a few more years so that I can dabble around and fool around in this working class history. I want to thank my family and particularly my wife and daughter who have been very supportive and instrumental in all that I have done. And God bless you. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks to both of you. What a legacy. Finally, and next up, I am proud to present Emily Hilliard and Rick Wilson, both of who will be presenting the Hazel Dickens Artmaker Award. This award is for artists, creative writers, and musicians whose work engages economic justice, in particular themes related to labor in West Virginia. All forms of creative expression, including but not limited to music, literature, poetry, plays, film, photography, and other visual arts, were eligible.
Emily, you kicking us off?
I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. My video and sound cut out.
Gotcha. All good.
Okay. Now I can see you, Rick. So I'm sorry I missed Kenzie's remarks, but I just wanted to say I'm really honored to co-present the Hazel Dickens Artmaker Award to labor songwriter, musician, activist, radio host, teacher, and devoted mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother Elaine Pyke, who is deeply missed. Elaine was a commanding advocate for the state's working people through her resonant original labor songs and interpretations of traditional and gospel tunes that enhanced her invaluable grassroots organizing. She was also a dynamic music educator of the next generation in her home community. Speaking of her role in Appalachian labor music, Pete Seeger said, Elaine Pyke's songs carry on the great tradition of Ella Mae Wiggins of Gastonia, North Carolina, and Aunt Molly Jackson of Harlan County, Kentucky. A native of Lincoln County, Pyke was raised in a family of musicians and flatfoot dancers, and she attributed her powerful, electrifying voice to the a cappella singing she learned as a member of the Church of Christ. She recalls that as early as age 5, she would stand on a rock in her grandfather's yard and sing Frankie and Johnny for family and friends. I think Rick will say a little bit more about that. As a teenager, she played in bands with her brother, and in her early adulthood, she was the lead singer of a local country band. When her husband, Bethel, a third-generation coal miner, got involved in the UMWA strike against the Pittston Coal Company in 1988, Elaine began writing songs for the cause. About her role on the role of her labor songwriting in birthing a new identity, Elaine said, "My actual natural birthday was May 29th, 1949, but I really wasn't born until the 1980s after I got involved in all of this stuff, because that's when my blood really started pumping." When Ronnie Gilbert of the Weavers came to sing for the striking miners, she invited Elaine to play. It was there that Elaine first performed one of her original songs, America Our Union, which became, as Pyke said, a national anthem for the movement. When union steelworkers were locked out of Ravenswood aluminum in the infamous Ravenswood lockout of the early 90s, Pyke once again wrote a rallying cry for the workers in One Day More. It would become her most famous song. Her first performance of it at a Union Hall rally was filmed by Barbara Koppel and used in her PBS special Locked Out in America, Voices from Ravenswood. One Day More appears on the 2006 Smithsonian Folkways compilation Classic Labor Songs alongside songs by Woody Guthrie, fellow West Virginian Hazel Dickens, and Pete Seeger. In the liner notes, Elaine explains the title phrase, coined during the Pittston strike, No matter how long the company or the corporations can stick around, we have enough strength, friendship, camaraderie about us, and enough belief in what we're doing. We can be there one day more. Whatever they do, we'll be there the day after. In 1996, Elaine released a solo album, Mountain Music, Mountain Struggle, which I have a copy of right here. Oh, sorry, I haven't got the screen worked out, which includes her original labor songs, traditional folk songs, gospel, and country. She performed at regional and national festivals, including the 1995 Ralph Rinsler Memorial Festival at Highlander in New Market, Tennessee, the 1997 Festival of American Folklife in Washington, D.C., and in the Appalachian program at the 2003 Smithsonian Folklife Festival. She is also included in the archives of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress in her role as an organizer in the Grassroots West Virginia Organizing Project. And for her work with that, she is portrayed in Penny Loeb's 2007 book and 2014 film Moving Mountains, based on the Bragg v. Robertson federal case, which restored clean water and temporarily halted mountaintop removal in a Mingo County community. But nowhere is Elaine's impact felt more than in her home in southern West Virginia. Starting in the 80s, Elaine was a featured performer on the Logan County Wallace Horn Friendly Neighbors show, and after Horn died in 2013, Elaine took over as the show's host. For the last 10 years, she taught songwriting and traditional music after school and summer programs to children at Lincoln County's Big Ugly Community Center. For Elaine, activism and music were not separate entities, but part and parcel of the cultural heritage and sustainability of her community. And that's the lesson that she hoped to instill in the children of her home county. For the past 40 years, Elaine was engaged in the hard work of labor organizing in West Virginia coalfield communities through her songs, committed teaching, and tireless community activism. While her national and international profile may not be as far-reaching than other folk singers of her generation, that's all the more a testament to her commitment to what was always her singular cause, making life better for working people. Ever that little girl standing on the rock, she believed that songwriting, storytelling, and creative work were powerful tools for both personal and collective liberation. And I'll just end with a few of her own words that she told me in an interview. I don't know who this is going to go out to, but if there's anybody listening to this or reading this and you've got any idea that you can do anything, write a story about what you're going through, tell it, write it in a poem, just put it on paper and try to put music to it. Just get it out there. Just get it out there and let people know what you're thinking. And you'll be surprised how much it will free you up and help you out, because it did me. It made a monster out of me. And now Rick, I think, is going to provide the color commentary as a close friend of Elaine's.
Yeah, I could tell Elaine stories all night, but first, Terry Wilma, major shout out. Fred Barkey, you're my hero. And I bugged you to publish the Socialist book for decades. I hope you remember that. But anyway, as Emily said, when Elaine was a little girl on Sand Creek near Hearts in Lincoln County, her daddy would put her up on a rock to sing her heart out. And she was an amazing, accomplished woman, multifaceted, but there was always that part of her that was the little girl singing on the rock. And I don't mean that she was like, kept in childhood. I just mean she never lost that part of herself. And I first met Elaine and Bethel. I'm going to give as much love to Bethel as to Elaine during the Pittston coal strike. I had just gotten my job with the American Friends Service Committee, and I wanted to do whatever we could to help union miners and their families during the Pittston strike. And I met Bethel, and I thought Bethel was in charge of running the whole strike. I thought he was in charge of everything because he was everywhere all the time, cared for people, propped everybody up, respected people, respected women, just a really great person. And then I heard about Elaine, and this was also the time when I was trying to learn how to play guitar. So there's like struggle of the working class plus guitar. So hold that thought. And anyway, Elaine was working at Hardee's in Chapmanville at the time, and I heard she'd been performing and started writing labor songs. I think her first two were Picket Line Ladies and America, Our Union, as Emily mentioned. And so we had this great, our first really serious connection was in Hardee's in Lincoln County. And I walked in, asked a really stupid question. I was just a guitar beginner. I said, do you flat pick or finger pick? I mean, as if Elaine would finger pick on a nylon guitar, and so she quickly gave me a concert, the first of many, in the parking lot of Hardee's. And from then on, it was on with Bethel and Elaine, sometimes separately, sometimes together. And after that, I would occasionally suggest songs to Elaine to write. I don't have the gift of songwriting. And she called them English assignments. And I have a couple examples. At one point, I told her that, as far as I knew, no one had ever written a song about a jackrock. Jackrocks don't really exist in the world. And if they did, I would have no intention to discuss them or anything. But so she came up with Talking Jackrock Blues, the first line of which is, there's a little toy used in strikes you see. It's made by little elves in a hollow tree. Another time, we were talking about the idea of a general strike where all the workers just join together and shut everything down. And the old Wobblies, the industrial workers of the world, used to say that if the working class put its hands in its pockets, then the bosses couldn't stick their hands in and rob them. And we were talking about that. And Elaine came up shortly with Labor's Got Its Hands in Its Pockets, which is another one of her great songs. And I have to tell you, during a strike like Pittston, people are extremely stressed out. It's really hard. But the dirty little secret is people are having the times of their life. They're really living to the full. And after it ended, we went through withdrawal. Bethel and Elaine and I, it's almost like we had the shakes. It was like a physical thing. And in the spring of 1990, the West Virginia teachers went on strike. And we went, oh, God, we got another one. Let's go, And it turned out that my county of Cabell was one of the few where people didn't go out on strike. They started calling it Scabble. And my mother was a retired teacher who just retired from Cabell, said, why don't you call your coal miner friends to come up here and shut down Cabell County? And I thought that was the best idea ever. I called Bethel, and we were going to do it. And then before we could do that, they settled and won this strike and went back to work. My main complaint about the labor movement is sometimes they settle while I'm still having fun. I hope you guys work on that. But anyway, the lockout at Ravenswood, as Emily mentioned, affected 1,700 people in one little town in Jackson County. That's as many as miners in 3 states during the Pittston strike. And Bethel and I went there early on hoping to help out, and people weren't interested. They thought they had it under control. It was a year later before I got the call to go up there and talk to people. And during a long struggle, morale is really important. Without keeping morale up, the company knows what you're doing. You can lose. They can provoke people into doing destructive things. And as soon as I got back from the first meeting in Ravenswood, I called the Perkies, I got them on the line. I said, Elaine, those people in Ravenswood need a song, something to boost morale. Their cause has been written off as hopeless. And I said, I'm thinking something like One Day Longer, like Bethel always used to say during the strike. Maybe something in a minor key. And Elaine and I always gave each other crap. That was the basis of our relationship. And she said, you want to tell me what the chords and the lyrics are too? I mean, just perfect, Elaine. I said, no, I'll leave the minor details to you. And I gave her some info about that. And that night at 11 o'clock, I got awakened by a phone call from Elaine, and she sang One Day More. And I just had these chills. And I knew that long after she and I were both dead, any of us involved in those things, that song would still be sung wherever working class people were fighting. And I could tell Elaine stories all night, but I'll stop with that one. And thanks so much for letting me go back on that.
Thanks to both of you for helping us honor Elaine in this way with the Hazel Dickens Artmaker Award. Her legacy definitely lives on, and may she rest in power. I get the honor of also closing out tonight's awards. Thank you. Thank you to Lou, to Chuck, Emily, and Rick for your presentations this evening and helping us honor the lives and tireless work of Terry Still, Fred Barkey, and Elaine Perky. All of these people make Appalachia home, and they make it better. Thank you to those who work behind the scenes to make the ceremony a success. Lindsay Shade and Kimberly McCoy for your support in coordinating and promoting the awards. And of course, this ceremony, like all of the museum's programming, is made possible through our incredible volunteer board of directors who have given and continue to give so much to make sure that this history is heard. Thanks to our museum members who support this work daily and allow the museum to really survive and thrive. Thanks to all of those who are watching tonight, tuning in with us and sharing a very special evening. Many of you know that we are entering a season of giving, and I know that there are so many wonderful things and important causes to give to. But tonight I want to invite you to consider giving back to the museum this season so we continue to grow the work we are doing in uplifting a proud working class history. So I have 3 invitations for you to do just that. First, this weekend, tomorrow, is our last weekend open for the 2021 season. So make the trip to make one. We've already welcomed 1,400 guests inside our new union-owned building with expanded exhibits this year. We'll be closed throughout the winter until April of next year, but we're also available for by appointment tours, which you can book on our website at wbminewars.com/visit. Second, become a sustaining member of the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum for 2022. We're coming off a very incredible year in 2021 where we organized dozens of partners across the Mountain State to join us in a statewide commemoration for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain. The Blair 100 event series is being remembered as the state's largest event series geographically to ever take place. We'll post a membership link in the chat. You can simply follow the link to pick a dollar amount that fits within your budget. And finally, if a membership isn't the right fit for you at this time, you can support the museum with a one-time donation. Every single dollar counts and will go towards supporting the museum's programming and expansion in 2022. This support will empower us to create a permanent memorialization of the Blair Mountain March, expand our public opening hours, launch a new student-based exhibit in our Solidarity Gallery, and begin the design of and programming for Sid Hatfield's former apartment in Make One, and so much more. We've got a lot planned for 2022. Finally, your support ensures that this proud Union history won't be missed by another generation, but will instead inspire new ones that will carry on the legacy of those we celebrated tonight and the miners who fought for justice 100 years ago. Thanks again for sharing your evening with us and being a part of this work. We look forward to being in touch. Good night, y'all.